Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio, so today I am here to explain to you why the next Pokemon TCG rotation will be Sun and Moon onwards. Now, this has not been announced, but I am 97% certain that it is going to be Sun and Moon on. I thought I would give you a heads up in advance, but I figured rather than just telling you, although I have done this before, I would make a video explaining my reasoning so you could all go, oh yeah, that makes sense, that does. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is, I think you can prepare for a standard format being Sun and Moon on in September of 2018, but this is not a guarantee, it is not announced, and being that I am a professional law teacher, I must say in advance, please do not rely on this for any financial decisions you make, and if you do, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disclaim responsibility. Sorry about that. So with that out of the way, let's see why the rotation will be Sun and Moon on in September. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar, the rotation basically means that every September, Pokemon turn around and go, right, you cannot use these sets anymore in tournament play. So at the moment, we only have Breakthrough on. They are the only sets we are allowed to use at the moment. So that gives us Breakthrough, Breakpoint, Fates Collide, Steam Siege, Evolutions, and then all the ones from Sun and Moon onwards, Guardians Rising, etc. They are what we are allowed to use. So I thought what we would do is we would have a look at the history of the rotation and see why it's definitely going to land on Sun and Moon on this time. So in September 2017, we went to Breakthrough on, rotating out Primal Clash, Ancient Origins, and Roaring Skies. 3 in total. In September 2016, we rotated to Primal Clash on, losing X and Y, Flash Fire, Furious Fists, and Phantom Forces, rotating 4. In September 2015, we went X and Y on, losing Boundaries Crossed, Plasma Storm, Plasma Freeze, Plasma Blast, and Legendary Treasures. In September 14, we went Boundaries Crossed on, losing Dragons Exalted, Dark Explorers, Next Destinies, to give 3 in total. Now, we also lost Dragon Vault, but the rotation does not rely on mini-sets. Generations doesn't count, Dragon Vault doesn't count, Shining Legends doesn't count. It's got to be our 4 main sets a year that are February, May, August, and November. In September 2013, we went Next Destinies on, losing Black and White, Emerging Powers, and Noble Victories. Again, only rotating 3 sets. In September 2012, we went Black and White on, losing Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Unleashed, Undaunted, Triumphant, and Call of Legends, which gave us 5 in total. And in September 2011, we had a giant rotation and an early rotation. We went Heart Gold, Soul Silver onwards, losing Majestic Dawn, Legends Awakened, Stormfront, Platinum, Rising Rivals, Supreme Victors, and Arceus, rotating out 7 main sets. And that was basically 2 years worth of cards in one. But this wasn't a usual rotation. This was an emergency rotation because, you see, what happened was that we ended up with the black and white rules. And one of the things that the black and white rules said is that you could play trainer cards going first. Now, that wasn't the case pre-black and white. And very long story short, Saberline meant you could guarantee you go first, and then doing all your things on turn 1 with trainers, etc. It led to a ridiculous format which had to be fixed. So after UK Nationals, but before US Nationals, we had an emergency rotation just going Heart Gold, Soul Silver onwards, with all the black and white rules. So, there are 2 main things that Pokemon look for when they are looking for the rotation. They came out a few years ago and said they want to rotate 4 sets a year. Now, the reason is very simple. They release 4 sets a year. So if we look at the Sun and Moon sets in 2017, we got Sun and Moon, Guardians Rising, Burning Shadows, Crimson Invasion. We get 4 sets a year, we rotate 4 sets a year, and in theory, every year starts with roughly the same amount of cards tournament legal. Now, it's not a perfect thing because not every set has the same number of cards, but as a general rule, this works quite nicely. Now, like I've said, sometimes we get other sets like Double Crisis or Generations, which are released in addition to our regular sets, but these don't count. They're not really factored in with the rotation because they're not regular sets, they're not in the 4 per year. Now, we know that Pokemon don't always rotate 4 a year. In fact, in the time period I'm looking at, after September 2011, there has only actually been 4 rotated once in September 2016 when we lost X and Y Flash, Fire, Furious Fists and Phantom Forces. However, they averaged to 4. We had 5 rotated in September 2012, but 3 rotated in September 2013. We had 3 rotated in 2014, but 5 rotated in 2015. Now, if we go Sun and Moon on, that will rotate 5 sets. Breakthrough, Breakpoint, Fates Collide, Steam Siege and Evolutions, because as I've said, Generations doesn't count. And a bunch of people have said, well, hang on a second, Ross, it might not be Sun and Moon on, because that would be rotating 5 sets. Well, the last time they rotated 5 sets was in 2015, because they rotated 3 sets in 2014. In 2017, they rotated 3 sets, Primal Clash, Ancient Origins, Roaring Skies, so they're rotating 5 sets next year to even out to 4. And I know a bunch of people have gone, well, hang on a second, you're not counting stuff like Double Crisis. No, I'm not, because the mini sets don't count when you're looking at 4 sets a year. Reason number 2 why it's going to be Sun and Moon on, the other thing Pokemon want to do, they rotate in blocks. And let me explain by going through the years again. September 2011, Heart Gold Soul Silver on, which rather obviously is a start of the Heart Gold Soul Silver block of cards. Heart Gold Soul Silver, Heart Gold Soul Silver Unleashed, and so on and so forth. September 2012, we went Black and White on, another very obvious block. September 2013, we went Next Destinies on, which might seem a little bit unusual, except Next Destinies was the first set where we had EX Pokemon. Which means that as of September 2013, any set that had EXs was legal, and any set that didn't have EXs wasn't legal. You've got to remember that this game is played by children. And a lot of the time, the cards are bought by parents who don't understand the game. Make it as simple as possible. Rotating blocks does that. 2014, Boundaries Crossed on, which looks a bit weird, except that was essentially the Black and White 2 first set. September 2015, X and Y on, which is quite obvious. September 2016, Primal Clash on, which was the start of the sets to celebrate Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. 2017, Breakthrough on, we kept every set that started with Break Pokemon, but got rid of any before. If it's a set with Break Pokemon, yes. If not, no. Or a set later, of course. This, for my mind, was one of the messier rotations we had, because it's not the most obvious block. So if we rotate to Sun and Moon on, we get all the Sun and Moon cards, but none of the preceding X and Y cards. All the GXs remain legal. All the EXs get rotated out. All the Break Pokemon get rotated out. And don't forget they changed the design of the cards in Sun and Moon, so we get this beautiful rotation where if a card has this basic template design, it's legal. If not, it doesn't. As far as I'm concerned, this is an absolute no-brainer. Yes, it means rotating 5 cards, but it averages at 4 over the last 3 years, which is what Pokemon want. It gives us a super clean Sun and Moon on rotation. It keeps GXs, gets rid of all EXs, gets rid of all Break Pokemon, and means that all the templates, the borders, etc. remain nice and consistent. Some people have suggested Evolutions on, but then you've got EXs, you've got Break Pokemon, that's messy. Some people have suggested Generations on, but then you're still keeping some EXs, some old border cards, etc. I really believe super strongly it's going to be Sun and Moon on the next rotation because, well, I've made this video and I've explained it. Every year when the rotation is announced, everyone rushes onto social media to go, I called it! I said this is what it's going to be. Well, I'm going a step further, and I'm making a video months before the rotation, by which I literally mean like 7.5 months before the rotation, setting out my stall. And I might be wrong. It's not been announced. but it makes way too much sense. And I literally did just take you through the last 8 rotations explaining why they all made sense and why Sun and Moon fits nicely. I know a lot of people agree with me, but I've also had a bunch of messages from people who don't. As always, there's a comment section. That's where that argument belongs. Tell me if you think I'm right. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me what you think the next rotation is going to be. Although, as I've said, I am dead set on Sun and Moon on. Go nuts, but be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. Please make sure you check out my video game channel Wassy Plays that we're uploading to again. And if you want to support the channel, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can get bonus podcasts where I answer all of your questions. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.